Hello again and welcome to the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are looking at the water we drink. We are taking a specific look at one county that not only has to deal with their responsibilities in water, but their responsibilities for water passing through their county go to several others. So we will be having that discussion a little bit later. We're going to take a close-up look at one of the components that affect water quality, and that is our agricultural neighbors who are usually on the top side of water making its way to the city. So that's where we'll begin today.
Here we are in the Camas Valley, which is one of our more important resources in the county in terms of water quality and water quantity. And this is one of the major tributaries into the Weber River.
Part of what I do up here is take water out of the Weber, which comes out of the Uintas right behind me here. These were some early water rights that were taken out early on and have been used pretty much continuously to put water out in this valley. Working with these lower ranches here immediately in our valley, we need to use the water when we can get it, but we also need to work cooperatively. And on a broader scale, we need to take into account the downstream users all the way down to the Great Salt Lake. We have to take that into account. We're a big part of the puzzle up here right from the get-go.
Tenny Cannon's house is way up near the notch of that canyon up there. So you can see that we have an enormous flat valley that we need to manage in this location.
We're providing a sponge here that slows the flow for a while. It allows the floods that would be taking place otherwise to be slowed down, and we're providing water at a slower rate down through the system so that it can be utilized all summer in the reservoirs till next year even. Here is an example of one of the early ditches that comes out and stays high on our contour through the valley. This ditch delivers water for quite a few, many squares of miles down below us here to the south.
Not only do we have grazing habitat out here, but we also have habitat for wildlife. In particular, you can see in the far distance there are two bald eagles that are sitting in a tree over there. This is modulating the amount of water that gets flowed down the river because it gets spread out and it gets absorbed through all this ground. And the Weber here actually is broken up into a bunch of different subchannels, and so it continues to spread and continues to saturate the ground, and that modulates the flow. So it modulates the flow into the Weber River. It makes the Weber River flow more constant year-round. Because of flood irrigation, we're putting so much water back into the ground, probably in the order of 90 or 80% of the water that we take out through diversion in surface water flow goes back deep into the ground. That ultimately ends up in the Weber River, ultimately ends up downstream. In the process of doing that, it takes out the phosphorus and the silts and the sands and the clays and the other things that are preventing that would cause the Weber to be of poor water quality.
Flood irrigation on the surface might look a little inefficient because it's so labor intensive, but for me, I like doing it. It's something I've always wanted to do and always hoped to do, and it's something that I don't take lightly. It's something that's very important to me.
Our responsibility here is to ensure that not only are we delivering good quality of life to our citizens here, but that we are delivering good quality of water to the downstream water users in the Central Valley, because they are dependent upon us to provide them with good, clean drinking water.
We'll be back with more of County Seat. We'll continue our conversation with our guests. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Yeah, we're folks bound by traditions. Whether it's holiday time or vacation time, make sure that one of your traditions is a stop at the Creamery in Beaver, Utah. Delicious cheese direct from the factory, ice cream, tasty treats, crafts, and gifts of all kinds. And it's the perfect place to get a bowl of creamy mac and cheese. Start your new tradition the next time you're headed our way. The Creamery in Beaver, Utah. Farm, meet table.
Mountains to explore. Adventure to be had. A town to fall in love with. Yes, all that in Park City, Utah. Start planning your fall adventure at visitparkcity.com.
Bear Lake is rich in friendships and color this fall. Explore countless miles in some of Rich County's best off-road trails. Whether you enjoy the pace fast or slow, there will be plenty for you to explore. Vibrant reds and yellows await you in this magnificent landscape. Come spend some time with us this fall exploring our trails. Rich County.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about the water that you drink in Salt Lake County or Summit County or Weber County. It all starts way up there in our neighboring counties, and there's a big responsibility that sits with the counties. Now, we've kind of looked at the agricultural angle of people who are in the stream, so to speak, but now we're going to talk about the rest of us. Joining us for this conversation is Phil Bondurant, who's the Director of Environmental Health for Summit County Health Department, and Derek Sidaway, who is the Public Information Officer for Summit County Health. That sounds much more drier than I hope this conversation is, Derek.
We'll try to spice it up a little bit.
I would like to really start this with, you know, people look at the county and look at the city and they see water departments and they see water conservancy districts and they see people who are handling the water, and they don't usually think about the health department. What's the interface?
And you're exactly right. The water departments and the people that manage the infrastructure in the ground have a valid role in this, but the health department is that entity that requires standards to be met in the water that's being sent downstream or the water that we're drinking. So your E. coli, your bacteria, essentially those things that you don't typically think about in water, because we're lucky enough here in the U.S. and especially in Utah to have clean drinking water. The health department is the agency that ensures that happens. And so as you can imagine, from the headwaters to your fountain or to your spigot, there's a lot of miles of pipe that it flows and a lot of area that it covers. And so we need to make sure that when it hits that spot, it's clean and it's drinkable. So,
not wanting to sound like an Archer Midland Daniels commercial on Sunday morning, you don't put the chlorine in the water, you just determine how much needs to be put in the water.
we determine that the chlorine needs to be in the water and how much it is.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, that's really good. When most people think of water systems, they tend, until they get their bill, to just think of, well, there's a water system. How many different water systems sit within a county? I mean, I know that the stormwater system can't be part of the regular sewer system because it'll overtax it and might be toxic or something like that. I'd hate to have crap from the road and then the drinking water system, and then if you have a secondary system, I mean, and then you got septic tanks. How many different layers of water are there to manage the whole county, inbound and outbound?
Right, it's extremely complex. I mean, in addition to the ones that you mentioned, you've got gray water systems, people that are trying to conserve water and get the most out of their water. So you add these different layers, and you're looking anywhere 5 to 7 different layers to manage the water coming in and the water going out, with the water system that delivers it from the spring or the source that then gets it to the infrastructure that distributes it throughout the city or the county or the area. And then from there you go to your wastewater, and then you have irrigation that you mix in there, and then we don't want secondary water in with the drinking water. And then you have the stormwater runoff, and that's kept separate from the sewer water, the sanitary sewer, because you don't want the sediment in there, you don't want the grime, like you mentioned, coming off the road, because that can essentially impact the way a sewer treatment plant or an individual wastewater system works. If there's too much salt, if there's too much non-natural things in your sewer systems, it can ruin those. So there's that need to separate these different things out, and that complex network of different branches and arms going every which direction has the potential at each level to impact drinking water and groundwater. And that's where the health department comes in, is not only are we determining that the water to your spigot is clean and drinkable, but we're also determining that the water in its natural state in the aquifers and the groundwater is clean, it's kept clean, and it's kept within those standards established at the state level, that if somebody drills a well there, that they are actually pulling up clean, drinkable water.
I'm sure there's a tier of safety regulations, and so we would start, I suppose, are there federal water standards for water quality?
There are.
And then the state of Utah has standards?
They adopt the federal, and then they add their own in specific to the different regions.
So you would say then that the state standards are higher than the federal standards?
They are more specific.
More specific.
Correct.
What about Summit counties?
Summit County, we're in a position where we have a social responsibility with the headwaters being in our county to find a way to protect those waters and deliver that water not only within our county, but to the residents that are downstream from us. And so we have some very unique regulations, programs, those type of things in place that allow us to protect those waters while still serving the residents of Summit County and meeting that agricultural demand that we have.
So I have a question for you, because you're the guy that's going to get all the phone calls.
That's right.
How misinformed are people generally about the complexity of water systems?
Well, I'd like to think that we do a pretty good job educating people on what they need to know regarding the water system. So as Phil mentioned, there's a lot of things we do that are proactive, not just reactive. So you talk about boil orders and letting people know about those. But on the flip side of things, letting people know why they can't have a septic tank in this area and some of the long-term effects of that. So that education, as you mentioned, does play an important part in letting people know there's what's going on right now, but there's also what's going to be going on in 20 years from now.
Well, this is kind of an interesting point. I think I'm going to wait until we come back from break, but I want to come back to this and talk about septic systems in particular on the sewage side. We'll be right back with the county seat. Good conversation going on. Hope you'll stay with us through the break. We'll be right back.
Utah has a national treasure where winding canyons stretch to the horizon, where nature forms elegant structures, and where iconic monuments of the West stand tall. Visitors around the world come to get a glimpse of southern Utah's legendary landscape and landmarks. Join them and explore San Juan County, Utah's canyon country.
Crisp, colorful, a world in transition. You don't have to travel the back roads of Maine to explore autumn in all of its glory. Beaver County offers fall in unique splendor, with drives along forgotten canyons and hikes through meadows exploding with vibrant hues of red and yellow. Hit the road with your family and discover a side of Beaver County you never knew you were missing. Autumn is fleeting, so don't hesitate. Beaver County, it's time to experience the real Utah.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're having a conversation about the water you drink. And actually, while we're kind of focused on Summit County, the water you drink passes through their county for a lot of people that live here in Salt Lake. So pay attention. Okay, we left off talking about septic systems. So I grew up in South Salt Lake, all right, and I remember when we went off the septic system, we had a septic tank at our house, and like about 1962, 63, they came in and took out the tank and put the sewer pipe in. So, you know, urban areas pretty much have gone all to sewer systems. Where do they still exist? So I guess the question.
Yeah, septic systems they're still being used. I mean, there's more septic systems in the United States right now than there are municipal sewer systems. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You figure municipal sewer system, one system services an entire neighborhood, but then if you have individual homes, there's one system on each of those homes. And so Summit County has quite a few septic systems. We permit anywhere from 100 to 120 septic systems a year with new building, and that's typically on the east side of our county, so Highway 40 and east. And they're being used on a regular basis, and there's varying degrees, different types of systems. As you can imagine, there's a conventional all the way up to an advanced system, and so they're pretty robust now.
I think this, okay, most people probably don't really have an idea of what a septic system looks like, or an individual home system. And so some people think that it's just like a big gravel field and all the crap goes in there, no pun intended. And then there's some people that just think it's like a gas tank underground.
Correct.
What do septic systems look like, and what's the difference between a standard and an advanced?
So a septic system, you're right in that it has a tank, and then it has a field that distributes what's called effluent, and that's, without getting too techie, the tank separates and just liquid is going out of the tank. Regardless of what goes in, a properly operating tank emits effluent into a distribution field, which then distributes the effluent over a drain field or a gravel field, and then the natural processes filter that water through. And that's a conventional system where you're letting the biological processes take place. Now, an advanced system does the same thing, but it does it in a shorter amount of time in a smaller system. So it's a man-made filtration system that's going to purify that water to the point where it's the same water they use to irrigate golf courses with. It's not potable, but it also it has a low enough bacterial content that it can be applied above surface to water golf courses and that type of thing. So.
Is the goal of the county to get off septic systems eventually entirely?
I would say that we're moving toward that, and we've implemented the change from septic to sewer in a number of areas. There are some areas in the county that currently, with the technology that we have right now, we just can't do that. But in the places where we aren't able to do sewer, or sewer's not available, we're working to educate the homeowners and the builders in those areas to install the proper septic tanks to ensure that even though they're on a septic tank, and yes, sewer is the ideal situation, that we can make sure that they're safely installing these and that they'll work for them and they won't fail for them, and they'll also protect our water as well.
So I think we're going to take one more break. We're going to come back and spend the rest of our time talking about looking forward and some of the things that a county or a municipal system might look forward to in the future. We'll be right back on the county seat.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
You know, we're folks bound by traditions. Whether it's holiday time or vacation time, make sure that one of your traditions is a stop at the Creamery in Beaver, Utah. Delicious cheese direct from the factory, ice cream, tasty treats, crafts, and gifts of all kinds. And it's the perfect place to get a bowl of creamy mac and cheese. Start your new tradition the next time you're headed our way. The Creamery in Beaver, Utah. Farm meat table.
This is what adventure looks like, and here's what it sounds like. Southwest Utah's Iron County offers some of the most iconic trails within the state that include 200 miles of new trails to be discovered. Check out ironcounty.net for info and interactive maps for your complete guide to off-roading. Explore countless miles of trails in the heart of Dixie National Forest, the gateway to Utah National Parks, Iron County.
There are meetings, and then there are gatherings. At the Davis Conference Center, we know the difference. Turn your event into something more than just another business summit. With over 70,000 square feet of flexible meeting space, state-of-the-art presentation amenities, and inspiring architecture, the Davis Conference Center is designed to deliver stellar results in a majestic setting. Take your convention to the next level. Schedule now at davisconferencecenter.com.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today is about the quality of water that comes out of the taps. And we were just in the break talking about the fact that what Summit County does in regards to trying to protect water quality affects a whole bunch of counties to a certain degree, even all the way down to Nephi and all the way up to Ogden. So what I would like to talk about is things that you are doing in your county to go above and beyond to not only protect from the treatment plant down, but more importantly, starting looking upstream and what sorts of impacts you try and monitor. So who wants to run with that?
I'll let you take it away, Phil.
Yeah, well, you know, and most health departments understand, I would say all health departments understand their responsibility for permitting septic systems and that, but Summit County takes it one step further in that our Board of Health and our County Council are both intimately involved in this conversation, not from a standpoint of how does it impact growth and development, but how does it fit along with the environmental stewardship initiatives that we have. And so we've done everything from updating the septic program and making it more progressive and innovative rather than reactive. We've taken the rule and applied it in a way that allows for development to occur, but it's done so responsibly, and it doesn't necessarily create that gray area. It's more of a black and white sort of deal with some common sense approach applied to it.
From a guy who's a boater and an RVer, when you say gray, black, and white, I have very distinct images where water quality is concerned. So.
And you should, and that's the point of what it is that we're trying to accomplish, is that we understand those impacts that can have, the gray, the black, and the white water, if you want to use those terms, and we've made it clear that in Summit County that we are going to be extremely aggressive in protecting our natural resources, and that starts with water quality and wastewater.
How far upstream does that responsibility go?
Well, I think as far as our county extends really is where we consider our responsibility to be. So that goes all the way up into the headwaters of both the Provo and the Weber, where they're coming out of the Uinta Mountains.
What do you consider to be the real challenges as far as those headwaters, that upper portion of the water system?
I think it's going to be quantity. I mean, the reality is the growth in Utah is exploding. We're seeing growth at a rate never before seen, and we're seeing some changes in our climate that would indicate we're having drier winters, not as much rainfall during the spring, and we're not retaining the water in our natural basins and reservoirs that we normally do. And when that happens, you get different concentrations in your water. You start to see things like harmful algal blooms, increased levels of E. coli and coliform bacteria. And so when you already have a resource that's extremely finite, and it's something that is as valuable as gold in the West, and you begin to reduce that to where there's maybe not enough water for everybody, not only does that create problems for drinking water, but it also creates a problem because you're starting to see concentrations of some of these items that create public health concern in greater numbers.
So in the back of my mind, I sit there, and is it only the Provo and Weber that are in Summit? Aren't there a couple of other river systems that start in your county but maybe flow a different direction, or is that it?
Those are the two major ones. There's obviously lots of tributaries in that contribute to all of them, and there are a few that I believe go off somewhat to the northwest towards Wyoming and that, but the ones that, and we're focused on all of them, we want to be responsible for all of them, even our neighboring states, but the Weber and the Provo are the ones that have the greatest impact to, or the greatest potential to impact the drinking water quality of those in the Salt Lake Valley.
It was a very short few weeks ago that we were talking about Panguitch and fire and what happened to their water supply. What kind of a picture does that paint to you if the headwaters and the springs that feed a lot of this system were to fall prey in the water systems that we have to a fire and the contamination from the mudslides?
Well, I think it highlights the importance of all the things we can do combined that impact our water quality. So wildfire, to an extent, isn't something that we are in control of at the health department. So what can help, though, is people being on sewer systems or being on correct working septic systems, taking other actions to conserve water and take care of water, so that when something like that impacts the whole ecosystem, there are these other things in place to mitigate whatever damages may occur.
Are you concerned about wells?
Always. I mean, a well is simply just another access point into an aquifer, and there's that responsibility of the homeowner. Obviously, they want to have clean drinking water as well. But yeah, I mean, a well is a potential contamination source to any drinking water system, and so we work with the homeowners to grout wells and to install wells that are essentially the best technology available to make sure we're not introducing something that doesn't need to be there.
Are they less frequent than they used to be? Are more people going out to municipal systems?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. You still see a number of people on larger lots that maybe are in more rural areas that want that independence away from a water system, and so they do drill wells, and we still see a fair amount of them. But there's also the newer generations are more accustomed to maybe just turning on the tap knowing that it comes from a water system, and so they're more inclined to find a way to tap into an approved water system at the state and utilize that resource.
We're about out of time. Any last thoughts that we need to convey to people?
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to share what Summit County is doing and the best efforts that we're making to improve water quality.
Well, seeing as I live in Salt Lake County and some of my water comes from you guys, thank you. All right, that's it for the county seat. Local government happens. It's the closest level of government to you. Be involved, be part of the process, share this with your friends. We appreciate your joining us every week on this program. You can follow us on social media, and we just love to have responsible comments there, and polite ones, please, but we are always open to different points of view, and we thank our guests for showing up today, and we'll see you next week on the county seat.